on blast.
I'm a little raspy today. It's not because I'm sick. It's because I've been laughing a lot at the conversation that Sheldon and I just had. He's shaking his head because he just blew my mind and I just blew his mind. We can't say anything else.
Lost tapes, man. The lost tapes. I keep saying it. The lost tapes of this podcast would be a bestseller, man.
I don't want to say that this podcast is the center of the universe, but Toronto definitely is. And a lot of things are happening. And weird coincidences are happening. We can't say anything else. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am a rattled Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge, the most mysterious podcast with an introduction like that. I feel so bad that that's going to be our opening, that we just made all these illusions. But I don't know how we could.
No, there's absolutely zero way to talk about it. Yeah.
Without getting sued. Man, what a life we lead. Speaking of living lives, did you hear that Bettina was pregnant during the season of the podcast of the challenge?
I did see that. Headline. I'm not going to speak on. I'm going to tiptoe around this conversation, but I am curious as to how this always happens. Not people getting pregnant, but how you end up on the show for that long, not knowing that you're pregnant. Or maybe you find, do you find out while you're on the show? You find out after the show? I don't know. That all seems strange to me, but again, I'm tiptoeing around that conversation.
This is You Killed It, the Birds and Bees podcast, where we're going to teach Sheldon how babies are made.
I know that there are a couple people that listen to the pod that kind of message in all the time that will send some very funny messages about hey, would you like me to explain to you how this works? How, because shout out to our listeners, man. We have such great listeners that always message jokes here and there. And so I want you all to know that greatly appreciated whenever you guys reach out about not even just the show, but anything else. Cause the ties between whether it's the sports world or whatever else pop culture world that pop up, and that people have now joined in conversations and DMs about any and everything. It's so greatly appreciated. So huge shouts to all the people writing in and continue to do so.
Absolutely. And on that note, I want to give a shout out to several listeners. I'm not sure that I'm going to name them all because I'm disorganized. I'm going to be super honest, just moment of honesty. I got really high last night, and I think I might still be a little high. So this is going to be a good podcast.
Okay.
Legal in Canada. I'm allowed to say it now.
Back home smoking legal. I got more slaps than the Beatles. Sorry.
Last episode, we spoke about CT a bit. I pointed out that I noticed he was wearing his wedding ring again. And we also talked about, I spoke about how I thought that maybe if we're talking about 500 episodes of the challenge, one of I think the low-key great moments was CT and Diem's relationship in general, but especially her final appearance on the show. Mm-hmm. So we had a few listener comments, and it's confirmed CT got back together with his wife. They worked out their issues.
Okay.
And, I'm really happy to hear that because, we talk a lot about how what makes CT such a compelling television figure is that he has matured and grown so much, right? He went from being essentially a wild animal to being Uncle CT, sort of lovable, funny Boston mumble, a beast competitor, but not in competition, just being a pretty normal, healthy guy. And it's really great to see. So just shout out to all the listeners. Julia Lamanna and Sarah Casellas both reached out to me. There is someone else, and I feel so bad. This is a humble brag, but my Twitter mentions are lit right now, and it is blocking me.
I don't know if there's anything humble about that. I think that's just a brag.
In fairness, I am a pretty arrogant person, and I'm at peace with this.
What is happening right now? We're off the rails, but that's expected.
I will. I should have told you why my Twitter is lit right now in our previous conversation before we started recording. We might circle back to that when we stop recording.
Okay.
Anyway, let's get back on the rails, Sheldon Alexander.
So you mentioned CT and just how we've seen CT mature. But my question to you is CT one of your idols?
No.
Well, I'm surprised there was even an awkward pause there before you answered that, because I just started laughing right away because Emmy is annoying to me to begin with. But then this whole like CT is one of my idols, like Lady Gaga is in music. And it made me think, it's like, so instead of making fun of Emmy, because I don't want to do that too much, but is CT as successful in the challenge as Lady Gaga is in the music industry?
I would say he is more successful in the challenge than Lady Gaga is in the music industry. No, not to paraphrase Kanye West, but no disrespect to Gaga, but she's like, CT's one of the 3 greatest challengers of all time, like for sure.
Okay.
That's right. Fair. Like to borrow a phrase from Bill Simmons, he's for sure on the Mount Rushmore, like no doubt. Mm-hmm. And arguably on the Mount Rushmore of reality TV in that conversation.
Interesting. Okay.
Lady Gaga, as good as she is, and I'm not putting down her music, she is not on the Mount Rushmore of music, of pop music, of contemporary music, right? Like, and she's very good. I'm not putting her down. I'm just like, she's like, CT is, I don't know, the Rolling Stones of music. Okay. And Lady Gaga's not.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting. No arguments here.
I had a question for you though.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think CT feels about being compared to Lady Gaga? First by Emmy and now by us.
I think he likes it. I think he would appreciate it because it's just a relationship that he has with Emmy. I think they just have a good relationship, and he understands the Uncle CT role that he plays with her. So, yeah, I think he's okay with it. I want to know. Sorry, go on.
Well, I just thought you were going to go in a different direction. I thought you were going to say that like CT is a big Gaga guy and would be like thrilled with that comparison. But what you said was probably better.
No, I could see that. So thrilled with CT. Everyone is not thrilled with Amanda. And at first I was wondering, why is everyone so salty on Amanda? Like, is she that bad of a competitor? Like, that's what I thought in the beginning of this, right? And I'm like, okay, they did a great job of editing this episode together. Do you know what I mean? Because in the beginning, I was feeling sorry for her. I was like, yo, why is everyone so salty at Amanda? Like, Amanda's not that bad at this game. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes on here. But
I'm going to defend Amanda a little bit here.
Well, we'll get to like what actually goes on, but I think this is like the main theme of this episode, right?
Well, I think we can talk about it right now and then get straight into the daily competition. Yeah,
because I don't really want to talk about burgers in Romania. So yeah, totally.
No, there's no need for that. Although I think Romanian burgers should be the podcast episode title. I don't think we need to. And I also
don't care about Tori and Emmanuel breaking the shower. And get out of here. But anyways.
So what happens is Amanda's now on the Ruby team, and like immediately there's a lot of negative energy coming at her. And like Kyle, I don't like how, like, normally, you know me, I'm a big Kyle guy. I don't like how he like immediately was sort of talking shit to her about her to Logan, and that Logan and Nelson and Corey were all like fuck this girl. Because first of all, as Nelson said, he and Amanda are friends in real life. Second of all, what does that team lack? They lack someone who's good at puzzles. Amanda's good at puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like normally I'm a big Corey fan, and like normally I really like his sort of positive attitude, but he really dropped the ball here. They all dropped the ball by not being like, hey, Amanda, you know what? We're super strong, but it is what it is. We're not the best at puzzles, but you are.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're gonna be our secret weapon at that. Like if any competition going forward has a puzzle, it's on you. We're gonna stand back. You don't worry about the heavy lifting. And just come with that attitude. And she overheard a lot of them putting her down or being negative about her joining the team, and she took it personal. She took it too personally,
Mm-hmm.
but she took it personal, and I understand that.
Yeah, and I think the a key part of this is that, you could look at it in two ways. There's some people who would hear that and sense that, and they would be like, you know what? I want to prove these guys wrong. I want to
Yeah,
work extra hard and show these guys that I am capable of whatever. And there's other people that respond negatively to that. And I don't really think it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that it's different for different people. And clearly, that had a negative impact on her. That didn't make her want to like work harder or like join in on their team and like help them more. It kind of made her retract. And, that's a big part of the game, knowing your teammates and knowing how you have to respond and deal with that said teammates, because it's going to be different for every person.
yeah, yeah. I just she definitely handled it badly, and like
1000%.
she lived down to their expectations, which is something you never want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also understand why she was pissed.
Yeah. And I think, the negative energy of it didn't help, right? Like negativity breeds more negativity. And I think for her, then it gives you a lack of confidence. And you almost end up thinking, well, now if I really try and I mess up, then they're right.
Yeah,
But if I don't try,
that's a
then
good point.
I'm just a jerk, right? And they already think I'm a jerk anyways. So
Yeah,
cool.
she's
I'm
sort of
like,
getting ahead of their perception.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Speaking of perception, so the daily competition is called Sunken Intelligence.
Yeah.
And as much as I dislike him, something that always cracks me up is that whenever TJ names the competition, Josh always reacts like, ooh, as if he knows what it means. And if you think about it, like the name Sunken Intelligence betrays nothing about what this competition is.
Nothing.
And yet Josh like always has this react like he's like, oh yeah, like what are you doing? I know he's just being good on TV, but it's so funny to me that perhaps the least articulate person on the show
Oh, wow.
always has this like grunt, guttural reaction as if he understands. It always cracks me up.
It's just the normal Josh doing too much, right? Like that.
Oh,
If
he did
Amanda was
way too much this episode.
yeah, if Amanda is the main, storyline here, Josh is right there after, just like playing this whole mastermind thing. And I mean, I don't get it, which we'll get to, but yeah, this challenge, what did you think of this challenge, right? Basically, this was all about teamwork and communication
Yep.
and roles. But, quick synopsis, you basically had to untangle the rope, then attach the rope to the chest and drag the chest back into shore. The fastest time won, essentially.
Yeah.
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 So everything was about teamwork. And, overall, the one thing that's interesting about these challenges and how they get put together is we don't really get a sense that much for who does really well and who does really poorly, because it's a time challenge and you're editing it, obviously. So we're not seeing the full 10 minutes or 15 minutes or however long each team would take. But what we did get to see is who works well in certain situations and who doesn't. And, getting back to what I was saying about Emmy, to me, that really stood out because it was CT kind of realizing like, oh, okay, like I literally have to put her in a position to succeed in terms of like telling her exactly what I need her to do. And then even maybe telling her how to do it as well for her to actually be a benefit to the team.
Yeah. And they had the same issue with Kyle, where Kyle wasn't focused. Yeah. And
Ashley,
I mean, Ashley really lost her cool.
Yeah, which is expected.
which is expected. That's like the elements on that team. But also, as soon as I saw this competition, and I have it in my notes, I was like, oh, the Emerald team's going to win because having more people is such an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
That's one more person that can hold on to the ropes and keep them out of the way as you're disentangling.
Yeah.
That's one more person to carry the chest underwater. Like it, yes, Kyle and Emmy shit the bed on this,
Mm-hmm.
but also Sapphire team, CT's team was already up against it. Like they were already going to have a really hard time because it's just the four of them. Like they are now skating uphill,
Mm-hmm.
and they're in a pretty bad way. And the Ruby team were essentially four people because Amanda basically didn't participate.
Mm-hmm.
So
did they say how close it was at the end? Like when they said who won, did they say how close it was or no?
they didn't say how close it was. They said it was down to two teams.
Okay. Because that's what I was going to ask, right? Or that's what I was wondering, and I forgot to make note of that. Because, obviously, so it comes down to the Ruby team and Josh's team, right? But the big thing that went down, obviously, is Amanda, once again, who I'm interested in people's take on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she did actually ask, hey, what to do, right? Like, what should I do? How can I help? And they really didn't give her much feedback or instructions. Like there is a definite lack of leadership on that team, right? Because especially in something like this, where it's like not a puzzle, but there's some strategy involved. You need someone to kind of take charge and give people roles and whatever. And they didn't really do that. And that's probably because Nelson and Corey probably aren't the strongest strategic players in the game. So they might not have known how everyone can kind of help or what's the best way for everyone to help. So when Amanda's asking, they don't really say anything to her, but then she kind of takes it a little too far, right?
Yeah. She does take it a little too far. There's a lot. It's interesting. We're definitely at that point in the season where people know that the end of the season is coming and they're doing a little too much. Mm-hmm. They're not thinking a little as clear. They miss home. Mm-hmm. They are sick of each other. They're getting burnt out. They also, Tori made this point at one point in confessional. They're at a point where they like everybody that's left in the house. So it's like harder to make decisions because there's no like, oh, fuck that guy. It's like, yeah. Oh, but like, I like that guy.
Yeah. No, totally. I totally get that. I think, for the thing with Amanda, the fact that once she started like getting into the posing and like, just posing and styling and showing off and stuff. And then Ashley and the rest of the crew on the sidelines are egging her on. I wrote like, that's a weird flex. Yeah. Because like, what is that really doing other than angering your team? Right? Like you could pretend like there's something you could have pretended to do. And I think that she went too far, but there is blame to be had from the rest of her team as well. Because at some point someone could have said, hey, help me do blank. Yeah. Or how about you hold this? Or just anything. And instead it was all like negative. Oh no, don't do this or get out of the way. Or, you know what I mean? That wasn't anything like positive. And again, negativity breeds more negativity. They brought negativity to her in the beginning and she just snowballed that negativity and that led into the challenge. And the crappy part about it is, and we don't know how close it was, and it might not have even been close at all. But the fact that it came down to those two teams and she didn't really help at all. And you, John, just mentioned how much of a benefit it was to have so many different people helping. I mean, you could easily connect the dots to, hey, this didn't work. And it's probably her fault. If she had done anything, or as Corey said, just give me 30%. Yeah. Which Corey's isn't a lot to ask for, is it?
Right? No, not at all. So we have an interesting scene. I'm just going to touch on the clubbing scene. First of all, I thought everyone looked great. I'm not a big bucket hat guy, but Corey and Josh were rocking their bucket hats as they talked about who's going to go in.
Yeah.
And your man Josh is like, oh, I'm not going to say your name. And Corey, to his credit, in confessional, is like, okay, you're not going to call in CT. You're not going to call in Kyle. Like, process of elimination, it's going to be me. So, like, don't tell me it's not going to be me. Like, don't even do that. And this is classic Josh. He's doing way too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get it. I don't get Josh's game plan, right? Because, okay, so you're trying to protect Logan, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm saying this, and I want people to not play the result, right? And what I mean by that is, so what is a better game plan here if you're really trying to protect Logan? Because there's two things to talk about here. Why do you want to protect Logan over Corey? I don't really know the answer to that. Does anyone know the answer to that? Like, how are you that cool at Logan already that you're protecting this rookie over Corey? Like, I don't understand. But do you have something there?
Yeah. So, first of all, I agree with you. The one thing I'd say, and maybe we're not maybe this isn't coming through, is Logan is hurt. He's not injured, but he's hurt. And they're at a point where they should be thinking, who do I want to run a final against? Like, if I'm Josh.
Okay.
And you want to run a final against Logan, for sure. Because who's to say his hamstring can hold up with what will undoubtedly be a lot of running, probably on, unsteady terrain. Like, I see it. But he never says that to anyone. Like, he is speaking in Spanish to Logan, calling him his brother.
Yeah.
But if you say to Corey, hey, Corey, you're great, but I want to go against Logan in a final because he's got a bad wheel, I'm not sure Corey gets as mad. Mm-hmm. And on that same token, if it's time where you're thinking about who do I want to run a final against, you got to think, who do you not want to run a final against? That's CT. So shouldn't the vote be to put, if you're in the business of betraying friends, which is what Josh is doing by putting in Corey, shouldn't you be betraying CT?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing there, right? It's like, if you're going to make this move and go against the vets, why not put in the best vet? And, but overall, right, why I think Josh's plan is flawed is because if you're really trying to protect Logan, don't you put Logan in because then he can pick his partner? Because the reality is, whichever one of the vets that he chose, Nelson, Corey, Kyle, or CT, they're all going to pick Logan.
Yeah.
Right. So wouldn't you rather Logan get to pick who he goes against? And again, I'm saying this, don't play the results because, of course, it worked out. Cool. Great. Maybe Logan would have picked Corey. But my point is, more so, if you were really trying to help Logan, the move is to put him in so he can choose his opponent, because whichever one of the vets you put in, we're going to pick him, and you'd rather have Logan have his choice. Now, again, it all worked out. Cool. Great. I'm just talking about this from a strategy standpoint. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. And I agree with you. I mean, the reality is they're at a point where a vet has to go in.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I really think that Emerald blew it, because you got to start thinking, we are running out of opportunities to get CT out of the final. He might come back from an elimination. He might be pissed. He might infiltrate the Emerald team, but he also might not.
Exactly. You have no idea.
And you don't know. And you need to put CT in a position where he's rolling the dice.
Yeah.
More. Because, I don't want to say he's coasting, because that's dismissive of all the effort he's put in. Mm-hmm. But if you're a guy, you do not want to see him in a final. Similarly, if you're a woman, you don't want to see Ashley in a final. So she's getting too close now, and you got to take out those people that have shown that they can and do win.
So what did you make then of Tori's whole strategy of, okay, if they get infiltrated, then you throw the next challenge and then you throw that person back in to the elimination and then come back? Like, that to me seems like Not a good strategy because there's so many moving pieces, right? Like you have to lose, then you have to convince the team that wins that they're going to throw in that person that you want them to throw in, which like, why are they doing all of that to help your team? You know what I mean? Like it just seemed weird. And again, this is everyone's strategy trying to do a little too much, I think. But to think that, okay, so let's say CT wins and then CT infiltrates their team. You're now going to throw the next challenge next week, but then it's a women's elimination, so that doesn't matter anyways. So now you're planning 2 weeks ahead to when it's a male elimination. You're going to throw that challenge and then try to convince whoever won, hey, throw in CT again.
Mm-hmm.
And then against throw in CT again against whoever your team member is that lost. So let's say it's Josh that he switched with. And then now Josh is going to go in against CT and win to get back on your team. Just seems weird. Doing too much. Doing way too much.
Doing way too much. And we have to assume, like, how many people do you think are going to make the final? 12? Like 6 men, 6 women?
Who knows? Yeah.
They're getting close.
Mm-hmm.
They're down to 10? They're down to 14 people, 15 people.
So hold on. Here's my question, though. Here's my question. And the part that I really couldn't grasp, right? So if I'm Amanda last week, to me, gave the perfect example of what you should be doing to avoid the elimination.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I had this in my notes too. Go ahead, Sheldon Alexander.
And everybody instead, once we got around to the deliberation, or should we talk about the Amanda argument first, or we'll get to that. There's enough time to talk about the Amanda argument. But everyone in the deliberation, starting with CT, they automatically just started being positive and trying to play like the sappy, sentimental, like, oh, don't worry, I won't infiltrate your team. Like, I just want to stick with my team and I've been good this whole season and blah, blah, blah. And then Nelson did the same. Oh, I'm going to apologize to Amanda and to Big T. I'm so sorry. And I'm just like, what is happening here? Didn't we find out last week that what you need to do to avoid the elimination is to tell them that if I win, I'm messing up your team? That's how you avoid it. I thought that telling them that you wanted to stay on your team would be reason for them to keep you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Or reason for them to throw you in. My bad.
Yeah. I think that either you threaten to infiltrate the Emerald team to avoid elimination, or if you win elimination, you infiltrate the Emerald team. Mm-hmm. Like, people do not have their eye on the prize right now. You have to bust up the Emerald team any way you can.
Yeah.
Like, that's got to be the goal. Mm-hmm. Because, again, their numbers are playing to their advantage increasingly so. Like, they're winning more easily every week. Mm-hmm. And you know, hey, maybe a guy like CT is thinking, that's fine. I want to see Devin and Josh in a final. Like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But if you're Kyle, Corey, or Nelson, you gotta bust that up, and Logan as well. So what did you make of the strategy in the deliberation? Because I thought Devin was really smart in how he set things up in terms of saying, hey, we've really struggled to figure out what's going on. And I thought that was a smart move because, again, as you mentioned before, it puts the pressure on the castmates because it's now like you're putting them in a position to fail. Like someone mess up and then you're going to say the wrong thing. And then now you become the target. And now they're not the bad guys for picking whoever. They're picking whoever based off of a bad comment or whatever you said in this deliberation. I thought that was really smart. And then Josh doubling down and basically saying the same thing I found really weird. Well, because Josh likes to have the last word, right? Like Josh is smart enough to know when someone else says something smart. Mm-hmm. And just like likes to repeat it so he sounds just as smart. I mean, that's basically what I do on this podcast to you every week. So it's paying off for me. It's paying off for Josh.
So do you think the agency made the right move in picking Corey?
No, I know it would have like turned the house upside down but I think I'm serious when I say they should have put in CT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to put in CT every time now. And on the women's side, you got to put in Ashley every time. Because they're at a point where they got it, like, with their momentum, they have to be thinking about the final. And also, you know, if you set it up so CT has to go against either Logan or Corey or Nelson or Kyle, if you're Josh and Devin, that improves, and Emmanuel, that improves your position in every case except maybe against Logan.
But also,
like CT versus Corey, that's a win. CT versus Nelson, that's a win.
Yeah.
Like,
and also, I think more importantly, you got to use these chances when you're in control, meaning you're not one of the options for CT to pick. Right. So the retribution is kind of, you know, a little bit off the table because he would have to win and then come back and then win another challenge, win a daily challenge with his new team. Right. Like, of course, he could win and then switch you off the team. Cool. And that's probably what they're afraid of. But risk and reward. Right.
Yeah. I think they blew it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you got to shoot your shot, especially at this point, because letting him get to a final, you're just letting yourself lose.
I did think it was funny. Afterwards, Corey's coming in hot. He's pissed, and I understand why Corey's pissed. If I was Corey, I'd be pissed too.
Yeah,
he's coming in hot. He sort of goes at Devin a little bit. And Devin truthfully says, I wanted to put Logan in. Josh is your problem.
Yeah.
Like, go take it up with him. It's true. But I liked what Devin said in confessional. You're supposed to threaten people before you go into the deliberation, not after. Classic Corey.
Yeah.
That made me laugh.
Yeah, no, it was true. It's very true. And I think, you know, Corey has done a really good job in when he's mad or upset about something, he articulates himself very well. Like he laid things out perfectly for Josh, saying like, hold on, who are your people in this house? Fessy, and you got him out of here. And then you're telling me that me and you were pretty close. And then now you're going to want to put me in instead of Logan, like some dude you just met. Explain to me how that makes sense. And, I mean, Josh really can't because it doesn't really make sense. But at the end of the day, like, is Josh just thinking simply, oh, I'm going to go into a final with rookies and I think I can beat the rookies? Like, is that what his plan is?
I don't think it is. I mean, that would be logical. Like I said, if he said, you know, hey man, Logan's got hamstring issues. I like my chances against him better. Then I'd understand. But he hasn't said that. He hasn't said it in confessional. He hasn't said it to Corey. He is backing Logan because, you know, they've hung out for a bit. Like,
yeah.
And also Josh always does this. Like, Josh gets infatuated with new shiny people. And
this is true.
And just like throws his, like, he does this every season where he's just he really wants to be liked.
This is true. So what do you make of, you know, we know Corey's going down, Corey's going in. Logan is the obvious choice to go in, but I like Corey's energy this whole episode. Like, even him just before he goes in, he's like, hey, this is what it's all about. I'm going in, whatever, right? And he picks Logan. And, you know, this challenge was a good one. It was an interesting one, this elimination.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah, you're standing on top of a spear. A spear. I don't know why I'm having trouble pronouncing that, but here we are. And for no reason at all, there's like a fire lit below you, which I was like, wait a second. So what if they fall into the fire? That seemed weird.
I wondered about that too. It seemed dangerous.
Yeah. So you have to stand on top of this object, and it's basically kind of a tug of war, but not really. You got to pull the rope away from your competitor, a rope that is also on fire. And either you got to pull the rope away or have them fall off. And the most interesting thing to me about this, because really we know this is one of those classic things where if you watch a challenge, you understand, you think this is about strength, but it's really not, right? It's about strategy, momentum, balance, stamina, all those things.
You know who would have killed it? Jordan.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah, Josh even referenced that too. The thing that stood out to me though was it Amanda that says, I don't get how Corey's struggling on this. Like he literally does this every day. And I actually think that's a disadvantage because when he's doing the rope workout, he's just going all out. And that's not what this elimination was. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes, like if you really break it down, when he's doing the ropes work, you're going all out for like 30 seconds, as hard as you can, burning your muscles, blah, blah, blah. In this, it wasn't about going all out because you're not going to pull it away from him realistically, unless he's like super, super weak. This is all about strategy, and Logan had the strategy.
Yeah.
Simple.
Also, there was a moment where Logan had it down to only one hand on the rope, and Corey could not capitalize.
Which I found that so weird. I didn't get that. I didn't get that at all. Like I didn't understand how that happened, how Logan survived, because Logan almost went down first.
Yeah.
And somehow Corey couldn't get him off. And it seemed so strange to me. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it at all. But good strategy by Logan. I mean, when he had Corey in the exact same situation, what Corey was actually resting, right? Which doesn't seem like a good idea or a smart idea. And then Logan just pulled it from him, and it was like, okay, did Corey just give up? Do you know what I don't know.
I think it was a brain fart. Like, listen, I love Corey. Longtime listeners know I was not always a Corey fan, but he has, like CT, he has matured so much. And I really like how he conducts himself. He's one of the good people on the show, like a consistently good person, the moral compass of the show in a lot of respects. And now he's gone, and I'm sorry for that. But he's also not the smartest.
Yeah.
And that was a brain fart at best. Like you definitely have to keep two hands on the rope at all times. Even if you're not like gripping the rope, like you got to have it on there.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
And the other thing that occurred to me is that, it is a long rope, and like you can't just like when Logan yanks on it, there is like a half second that you have to react, and Corey just didn't react fast enough.
Yeah.
Like he'd put himself so out of position. So yeah, I thought it was a good competition. Like I would like to see this competition again.
Oh, definitely. Definitely agree. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really cool. And I thought what was also cool was Corey's reaction after losing. Yeah. A lot of his, like, he was pretty humble in his loss. Like he wasn't, and he was very much focused on, trying to gas up Nelson and being like, hey man, go do your thing. Like you got to carry it for us now. I thought that was pretty cool. It was a moment. It was a moment. And I know you didn't ask me yet, but I found it weird because my line of the episode were like two serious Corey moments. His thing with Nelson at the end where he's saying, he wants Nelson to go through and do this because he thinks it would mean so much for him and his family and him and his mom. And then also earlier on, serious, but on a different note, where he was yelling at Josh. He's like, listen, you're two people that you come into the house with that you claim to have the best relationships with. You turned on for Logan. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like you got Fessy out of the house. And then now you're telling me and you were cool. And now you're choosing Logan? That doesn't even make sense. Now, in fairness, I'm sure Casey is probably above Corey. Yeah. Right? But the point still remains, like, where did Logan come from to get all of Josh's, trust and blanket safety, for lack of a better term, as Logan just basically weasels his way to a final?
That's my line of the episode is at one point, Kyle says after deliberation, how did this rookie convince everyone to do this? And like, we haven't really seen Logan work the room, right? Like, we've seen him have strategic conversations, and like, honestly, credit to Logan for playing the game so well. But I don't understand how he's I mean, maybe it's not that hard to pull the blinders over Josh. I do think, though, that Logan makes bizarre decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
Why is your man not infiltrating Emerald? Like, what's the logic here?
He's just keeping his word to Josh, I guess. I don't know. And Emmanuel is his friend. Like, this is where Logan, and I mean, in fairness, Logan keeping his word has saved him, right? So I guess, you know, if he didn't swap out with Josh, if he swapped out with Devin, you know, you don't want Devin on your bad side. So maybe you swap out with Emmanuel, but that's his boy. So I don't know. That's his strategy. And I want to diss him and say, like, that's not smart, but it's gotten him this far. And I don't know how else he's gotten this far other than just, you know, being a likable dude that people seem to trust and want to keep around. And, you know, Ed basically sacrificed himself to keep Logan in the game. Josh basically, you know, tap danced all over the Vet Alliance that I know has like been long gone. But at the same time, like, he's now in a position where he's now in a position where he's on the brink of a final based off of nothing.
Yeah, it's true. Who killed it for you this week?
With all that said, it's Logan. I mean, I don't know how he's surviving. He's injured and he's winning. He won the elimination. But more importantly, it's just his ability to convince people that he should still be in this game, despite the fact that the theme is getting rookies out. Somehow he's done it. And as much as I want to knock it, I can't really.
Yeah, no, can't. I mean, I could give some LVPs out. Like, Josh is pretty close to earning an LVP. But I think you're right. I think that Logan is the MVP.
Yeah.
Which is funny because, like, we barely heard from him.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But maybe that's a credit to him. But, you know, he got a convincing and well-earned win. It seems like his leg is doing better. It helped that the competition was swimming, which presumably would be easier on his leg. So, you know, good on Logan.
More power to him.
Where can the good people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander, and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You know, support the movement on the YouTube page.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at J Chidley Hill. And until next week, this was You Killed It. I guess it's on me to say it. Yeah, you're pointing at me. Here we go. You killed it. I got choked up. It's that weed. It's that sticky icky.
No comment.
Blast.